Wanted to kind of talk about some things that have not been discussed or kind of been glossed over. There are a lot of impacts to increasing the minimum wage that we've not really looked at. Lost jobs is one that was touched on by Representative Rothman. IFO study, 33,000 jobs lost if we move to $12 an hour. That's the IFO study. You said you have some problems with that. Have you, and I'm not going to ask a question, this is a kind of a rhetorical thing at this point, if we examine the impacts on libraries and nonprofits and others that quite often employ kids after school and things like that, if we need to be making sure we're understanding how a minimum wage increase for those types of entities is really going to impact those sectors. The cost of the increased cost of goods and services, that's going to happen. The two economists that sat before the committee last week essentially said the median income for a median income of $55,000, that's a household median income in Pennsylvania, they said the average loss of purchasing power to that family will be a $1,300 hit if we increase to $12 an hour. And so it goes back to, it's not a matter of are there going to be effects. There are going to be effects. It's a matter of what is the degree of those effects. Something I've been doing for years is meeting with local employers. Small businesses, large businesses, they might employ 5 people, they might employ 500, and I've met with all of them over the last 12 years as I've represented the 129th District. A lot of them, even though they might pay minimum wage, they offer things like tuition assistance. They offer other fringe benefits, discounts on the food that they sell, or discounts on clothing and other things like that. So there are benefits that are built in there that, as I've heard the discussion of minimum wage starting back in 2009, 2010, you hear about that and you say, you know, how would that impact you? And they say, well, if I've got to pay more, I'm not going to be able to offer some of those fringe benefits. I'm going to reduce the employee discount, or I'm going to, you know, take away the tuition assistance I'm currently offering. Which leads me to, I mean, there's one impact after another. The impact on the higher wage workers. You know, you've got a shift manager who's currently making $12 an hour while the other people are making $7.25. Suddenly everybody there makes $12 an hour. How much does a shift manager have to be paid to keep his job? Does he then go to 15 or does he go to 18? You know, where does that go, and what does that do to the overall cost to keep that business open? The threat of automation, one that was touched on slightly, but I know a guy who owns a pizza franchise, the corporate is pushing him, saying, look, we've got a machine that'll do 4 people's work. Here's the price. It's a one-time expenditure. You have some upkeep costs, but it's a machine that does the work of 4 people. He's resisted that at this point, but he has told me if I've got to pay $15 an hour, I'm not going to have a financial choice except to automate and put those 4 kids, high school and college kids who are working to pay for their college tuition and so forth, I'm going to have to put them on the street because I'm not going to operate at a loss. That's not why I entered into business. And there's going to be a difficulty for low-skilled workers to find work, which really leads me to my next question, and that is, or my next statement, what is the value of a college education? The governor in his budget address mentioned a salary floor for teachers. So they come out of college, presumably with a 4-year degree, able to teach, and he says they should make $45,000. Yet earlier it was stated that MIT is saying a living wage is $23.65 an hour, which translates to around $49,000. So what that tells me is the governor doesn't think that the teacher candidate who has gone through 4 years of undergraduate schooling, done some teaching and so forth in the classes, they're ready to teach our children, ready to teach the future, and they're not worth the minimum wage that MIT is pointing out, the living wage, if you will. Why are we not asking for $24 an hour as a minimum wage, let alone for the teachers? I don't understand what this whole thing is doing. The value of a college education is being lowered. The value of people who go through technical training is being reduced. The value of those who go through trade school training, it's all being reduced. When we say the unskilled worker is now worth what you have gone to school to increase your wages. You've gone to school to increase your earning capacity. You've gone through training, et cetera, and your earning capacity is higher because of it, yet we're going to take the unskilled worker straight out of high school, no skills, and they're going to make $15 an hour. I don't understand the logic behind it. I think it's flawed thinking, and my closing comment is that I would recommend a listening tour. We got a listening tour going on here currently with recreational marijuana. I would encourage a listening tour where you're actually listening to small businesses like me and many of my colleagues have done. Sit down with the small businesses and find out what a minimum wage increase from $12 or $15, what's that actually going to do? Not people specially picked and appointed to come in. Go around and invite the communities and see what kind of response you get, not from the people who are asking for minimum wage, but from the businesses who are going to be essentially required to supply those jobs.